AITA for letting my ex obsess over my success and new soulmate? I am 29 years old. I used to work as a software engineer, but over time I ended up becoming the founder of a startup. This whole story started about 4 years ago, although the real drama reached its peak recently. From the beginning, one thing was always clear to me. Madison's family did not like me. She is 28 years old now. I was never naive or blind to that. Madison and I met in college. She studied business administration at a fairly prestigious private university on the East Coast, full of people with money and well-known last names. I, on the other hand, was there on a scholarship studying computer science, surviving on top ramen and energy drinks, while working on what I hoped would one day be the next big tech startup. Our first meeting was pretty typical. She spilled coffee on my laptop in the library. Instead of getting angry, I made a silly comment to play it down. Somehow, that moment ended up turning into a 4-year relationship, something I thought was completely real. The Ashworth family never said anything directly. They were too polite and refined to express it openly, but the signs were always there. The looks, the condescending smiles, and the way they ended up talking about successful men from their circle whenever I was around. It was painfully obvious. When Madison and I started dating, Mrs. Ashworth would introduce me as Madison's friend from college. Friend, even after 2 years together. At first, I thought Madison was different. I believed she could see beyond the world she grew up in, full of old money, golf clubs, and a constant obsession with status. Sometimes she laughed at how strict her parents were and rolled her eyes when they talked about their country club drama. We spent most of our time in my small studio apartment. It was nothing special. It even had an annoying leak in the bathroom ceiling that the landlord never fixed. We would sit together on my old futon eating takeout while watching Netflix on my old laptop. In those moments, Madison always said that money was not important, that she loved me and not my bank account. Over time, I found out that it did matter. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up building in a part of the city that was not exactly quiet. The neighbors used to have screaming matches or be incredibly loud in the middle of the night. Sometimes both, around 2 in the morning. Even so, it was our place. We decorated it with string lights, some posters, and several potted succulents that Madison bought all the time, although in the end, I was the one who kept them alive. I also had a rescue cat named Pixel, an old tabby that always knocked things off the counters, but who ended up curled up between us every night. Madison said she preferred dogs, but more than once I caught her talking to Pixel in a baby voice when she thought I was not looking. The beginning of the end started during a family dinner at her parents' sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was one of those overly elegant gatherings where people wore watches that were worth more than my car. And that was not too hard either, because I drove a 2008 Honda Civic with a dent in the bumper and a check engine light that had been on for a long time. Meanwhile, they drank wine from extremely expensive bottles, talking completely casually about their getaways to the Hamptons or Aspen, as if it were as mundane as my weekly visit to the laundromat. Madison insisted a lot that I go. She said it would just be a family dinner and that her parents wanted to get to know me better. I should have suspected something when she asked me to wear a blazer. I only have one, the same one I wore to my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. Plus, it was a little tight on me now. Startup stress and stress eating take a toll. Still, I wore it. I even borrowed some dress shoes from a friend for that night. But as soon as I walked into the house, I understood that it was not a simple family gathering. There were Madison's father's business partners along with their sons. They all seemed already successful in finance, law, or real estate. The kind of men whose LinkedIn profiles look like the American dream taken to the extreme. Ivy League universities, internships at Goldman Sachs, parents who know senators on a first-name basis. The conversations flowed between investments and vacations in Europe. Meanwhile, I was still working tirelessly on my startup, with almost no social life, surviving on top ramen and the occasional Chipotle burrito bowl, always with guacamole. Clearly, I had no story about summer houses in the Berkshires or ski trips to the Alps. It did not take long before the attack, disguised as casual conversation, began. "So, Caleb, are you still working on that little tech project?" Madison's father asked as he swirled his whiskey in a crystal glass that probably cost more than my rent. "It is a startup," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "We are still in an early stage, but we are making progress." I did not mention that our last meeting with investors had gone wrong, nor that my co-founder and I had been working over 80-hour weeks trying to fix prototype bugs. One of his friends let out a laugh. He was the typical guy with perfect teeth and a tan in February. Tech is very volatile nowadays, he said. Are you sure it is a good investment of your time? Maybe you should have a plan B. He said it with a seemingly friendly, but clearly condescending smile. I looked at Madison. I saw her shift uncomfortably in her chair, but she did not say anything. That was new. Normally, she would have chimed in saying something about my passion or how much she believed in what we were building. This time, she stayed silent. She just drank her wine and stared at the floral centerpiece as if it were the most interesting thing in the room. Then Spencer showed up. Madison's mother introduced him with exaggerated enthusiasm, almost as if he were a newly arrived prince. Spencer just became a junior partner at Sterling & Pierce, she announced proudly. He is a corporate lawyer, a Princeton graduate, and has a brilliant mind. She was practically reading his professional profile, and funnily enough, she strongly insisted that he sit next to Madison. You two have so much in common, she said with a smile. Meanwhile, I was on the other side of the table, suddenly feeling like I was watching my own relationship from the outside. The whole dinner ended up being a clear exercise in humiliation. The dinner conversation always ended up turning to the same thing: stability, secure careers, and already proven success. Spencer even started talking about the bonus he had recently received. Who brags about something like that at a dinner party? He also mentioned the condo he had just bought in the right part of town and confidently explained his plan to become a full partner before 35. I, on the other hand, really did not have much to contribute. Every time I tried to participate, someone would politely listen to me for about 5 seconds and then redirect the conversation to another topic. At that moment, I understood. That was not a family dinner. It was a kind of audition. They were showing Madison her options. Real men, with clear futures and solid careers. Not someone like me, who was still trying to get his first big break. They were basically painting a very clear comparison. What would her life be like with someone like Spencer, and what would it be like with me? I barely managed to survive that night, but the worst part was not the hints or the obvious comparison. The worst part was Madison. Throughout the whole dinner, she did not say a single word in my defense. Not one. Instead, she laughed at Spencer's jokes, asked him questions about his work, and seemed genuinely interested in his law school stories. After that, everything got worse. She started posting photos with him on social media, fancy dinners, spontaneous trips, gifts that cost more than my entire net worth. Every post felt like a direct mockery, as if saying, "This is what I deserve, not you." And the most painful thing was that, in a way, her family was right. After all my hard work, I had nothing to show for it. I had spent years chasing a dream that was still going nowhere, while Spencer, with his tailored suits and six-figure salary, seemed to have life perfectly figured out. My lowest point came one day downtown. I was working for Uber Eats, picking up food orders. That was how I was surviving at the time. I spent my days walking into the same restaurants where I used to eat, but now only to pick up bags and hope for decent tips. My car's air conditioning was broken. I was sweating inside the car. My phone only had 15% battery, and I was already 10 hours into my shift. Then I saw them. Madison and Spencer were sitting at a table outside a chic cafe in Soho, laughing and holding hands, dressed as if they had stepped out of a luxury ad. Madison had a new, expensive, and elegant haircut, clearly not from a cheap place. Spencer was wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than all my clothes put together. Madison saw me. She froze mid-laugh, and our eyes met. For a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes, maybe regret or guilt, but it vanished quickly. In its place appeared that polite smile you give to a service worker or a distant acquaintance, as if I were just a sad stranger she once knew. That moment broke something inside me. That was the last day I allowed myself to be treated like a joke. I went back to my best friend Leo's apartment, deleted all my social media, and made a clear decision. No more feeling sorry for myself. No more checking Madison's perfect life on Instagram. No more excuses. I cut off everything. Social media, distractions, self-pity, all gone. I went into total rebuild mode. I barely slept 4 hours a night. During the day, I made deliveries for Uber Eats. At night, I worked stocking shelves at a supermarket, and every free minute was dedicated to rebuilding my startup from scratch. But this time, I changed my approach. I stopped chasing investors with half-baked ideas and pretty pitch decks. I learned to bootstrap, build something real first, and ask for money later. I also stopped trusting so easily. I reduced my circle to the bare minimum, Leo and a couple of loyal friends. The rest of the time, I worked in silence. I eliminated distractions. I walked away from people who only complained about life and focused solely on results. Leo was amazing throughout that entire process. He brought me coffee during my late-night coding sessions, made sure I ate something other than protein bars, and never complained about his living room turning into my makeshift office. He even helped me get some interviews with contacts from his work when I was trying to land my first enterprise clients. That guy deserves his own success story, and by the way, he got it. Today, he is doing great at his dream job and recently bought his first house. Over the next 2 years, I completely disappeared from Madison's life. She had no idea what I was doing, who I was with, or if I was doing well. And the truth is, I stopped caring about that. While she was playing the perfect life with Spencer, I was working harder than ever. My new startup idea was born precisely from my previous failure. Instead of trying to create another revolutionary consumer app, I decided to focus on B2B legal tech. Specifically, I developed an AI-powered contract analysis system capable of doing in seconds what would take a junior lawyer hours. It was not glamorous. No one brags about that kind of thing on social media. But it solved a real problem, something I had suffered myself when dealing with legal documents in my previous startup. And one day, everything changed. We finally found the perfect product-market fit. A feature in a major tech journal went viral, and a major client gave us a testimonial that opened many doors. Suddenly, I was no longer fighting to survive. Now we were growing fast. Companies started looking for us. Even investors started calling us. And so the company that everyone had mocked before ended up competing directly with firms like Spencer's. 2 years. That was all it took. 2 years of silent work, absurdly long days, and overcoming an enormous amount of failures. There were times when I almost gave up, times when I thought maybe Madison and her family were right about me, but I kept going. Now I had an incredible team, people who believed in the vision as much as I did. Over time, they became a sort of family. We had our inside jokes, our Friday afternoon beer ritual on the office terrace, and many stories of endless coding nights and impossible deadlines that somehow we always managed to meet. And then, almost suddenly, everything started to fall into place. My startup was no longer just surviving. It was growing at full speed. Over time, we achieved something huge. We closed a deal with one of the top 5 law firms in the country. That agreement changed everything. After that came more clients, more investors, and much more recognition within the industry. Within months, we were already expanding globally, opening offices in London and Singapore. The ironic twist of fate was clear. Our biggest innovation was in legal tech applied to the financial sector, exactly the same industry where Spencer worked. Our AI tools analyze contracts in seconds, automating the work normally done by junior associates at large law firms, the exact kind of work that people like Spencer had built their careers on in the beginning. That meant something quite direct. My company was threatening his firm's business model, and he did not even know who was behind it. The first time I saw Madison again was completely by chance. I was at an exclusive industry event, but this time not as a guest. I was one of the keynote speakers. A year earlier, I would not have even been able to afford the ticket. Now I was on stage explaining how our technology was changing the future of legal services. When I finished my talk, I was shaking hands with investors and executives in a suit that finally fit me right. That's when I saw Madison's parents across the room. They looked different, less arrogant, less dismissive. They recognized me immediately. Her mother's eyes widened in surprise, and her champagne flute hovered halfway to her lips. Her father, the same man who years before had mocked me at his dinner table, simply gave me a slow nod, as if he suddenly respected me, as if I finally deserved recognition. Then I saw her. Madison was on one side of the room, completely still, looking at me as if she had seen a ghost. She looked good, sure, but different. The carefree smile she showed in her Instagram photos was not there. She did not approach me. I did not approach her either, but from a distance, I could see how her expression changed. First surprise, then realization, and finally something that looked very much like regret. After that night, as I found out, things started to go wrong for Madison and Spencer. Their relationship was already deteriorating. Later, I heard through mutual friends that Spencer was exactly what he seemed: cold, image-obsessed, and quite controlling. He treated her more like an accessory than a partner. At first, Madison enjoyed the glamorous life: luxury trips, fancy dinners, perfect photos for social media. But when the honeymoon phase passed, reality set in. Spencer was almost never home. He was always working or networking, which apparently meant many nights out with colleagues, many of them women. He also controlled the money. Madison had no independent access to anything. Besides, he decided how she should dress, how to behave in public, and even who she could hang out with. And the worst part was that her parents always took his side. Over time, it became clear that Madison was no longer the prize. Now Spencer was. She had traded everything for security and ended up trapped in a life that made her miserable. A few months later, I received something unexpected: a direct invitation from Madison's father. He personally invited me to a private business meeting, one of those elite networking events where powerful people gather behind closed doors and make deals while drinking terribly expensive whiskey. A few years ago, they would have laughed at the idea of inviting me. Now they wanted me there. I accepted, not because I was seeking his approval, but because I understood perfectly why they were inviting me. I was winning, and they wanted a piece of it. I arrived at the event deliberately late. When I walked in, I saw Madison and Spencer together. Spencer did not look so confident anymore. He was tense, constantly checking his phone. His firm was going through difficulties, and I knew exactly why. My company had captured a large part of their clients. Our software did the work of junior lawyers for a fraction of the cost, and law firms were migrating to our platform at an impressive speed. Maybe Spencer still did not know that I was part of the problem. Strangely, Madison did. When our eyes met across the room, I understood instantly. She had the same expression as at the previous event, but now it was more intense. Absolute regret. A week after the event, she texted me. I had deleted her number a long time ago, but her message still came through. "Hi, it has been a long time. I was wondering if we could catch up someday. Just talk." I ignored it. The next day, she wrote again. "I know things ended badly, but I have been thinking a lot lately. I miss our conversations." I ignored that message too. Then she did something desperate. She showed up at my office. It was late, around 8 at night. My team had already left, and I was finishing up some emails when the receptionist called me. "There is a woman here who wants to see you. She says it is important." I did not need to ask who it was. I thought about having her sent away, but then I reconsidered. Maybe it was time to close that chapter, so I told her to let her in. She walked in hesitantly, looking around my corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture. It was very different from the small apartment we once shared. The confidence she used to have was gone. The arrogant girl, who once insinuated that I was not on her level, was no longer there. Now she seemed smaller, insecure. "Hi," she said softly with a sad smile. "It has been a long time." I leaned back in my chair with my arms crossed, watching her in silence as she grew uncomfortable under my gaze. She hesitated for a moment and then took a deep breath. "I was wrong," she finally admitted. "I listened to my family too much and let go of something real for something fake." She bit her lip, looking for some reaction on my face. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss what we had." I tilted my head slightly. "What we had?" She nodded quickly with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I know I hurt you, but maybe we could start over." I looked at her for a few seconds, and then I laughed. Not with anger or bitterness, just amused. "Start over," I repeated, shaking my head. "Madison, us was over the day you chose your family instead of choosing me." She winced, but I was not done yet. "You did not want me when I was broke. You did not trust me when I was struggling to get ahead. But now that I am doing well, now you want to come back." Her expression crumbled. I stood up and buttoned my tailored suit, this time from one of those expensive places that probably made Spencer's suits too. "Madison, the truth is simple," I continued. "I do not think about you. I do not miss you, and I certainly do not need you." Right at that moment, the door to my office opened. My girlfriend, Maya, walked in. She was a brilliant product designer I had met at a tech conference. She believed in our company when we were still working out of Leo's apartment. Besides being smart, she was incredibly talented, and to be honest, She outclassed Madison in every way. Madison's face completely lost its color. I turned to Maya and smiled at her naturally. Then I looked back at Madison. "See," I told her calmly. "I found someone who actually is in my league. It turns out it simply was not you." Afterward, I walked her to the door and closed it behind her, but that was not the end. It was actually just the beginning of the real downfall. A few weeks later, a rumor started going around that Spencer's firm was in serious trouble. The reason was quite simple. My company's AI-based legal tech was capturing clients at an impressive rate. Our service was faster, cheaper, and much more efficient. We did in minutes what other law firms billed for hours. Spencer's firm started losing money trying to compete. Their traditional methods were no longer working, and instead of adapting, the partners started to panic. Through mutual contacts, I learned that Spencer was losing it in private. He was working more than 80 hours a week, desperately trying to retain his top clients. He yelled at the junior associates and took his frustration out on the staff. Investors also started pulling out. They saw his firm as a dinosaur in a market that was changing too fast. And best of all, Spencer still had not made the connection. He did not know that I was the one responsible for the company that was destroying his business. While he was falling apart at work, Madison's parents also started to panic. For years, they had treated me like a loser with no future, someone unworthy of their daughter. Now, that loser was richer, more influential, and more respected than a large part of their social circle. Suddenly, they wanted to act as if the past had never existed. First came small gestures. Madison's mother sent me a polite email congratulating me on my success. Her father even mentioned me in an interview, calling me one of the most promising entrepreneurs of the decade. Then came more invitations to business events, supposedly for networking. I ignored everything. Finally, Madison's father called me directly. I answered purely out of curiosity. "I think we should talk, son," he said in a warm, almost paternal tone, as if we had not spent years at odds. I let him talk for a while about business opportunities, potential collaborations, and things that, according to him, were water under the bridge. Then he got to the real point. "Look, Madison made a mistake. We all know that. She has been going through a hard time, and I think that if you two just sat down and—" I hung up before he could finish the sentence. There was no apology, no accountability, just damage control. That was the last time I answered his calls. The moment Spencer finally found out that I was behind it all was spectacular. It happened during a major business conference. I was participating in a panel on the future of artificial intelligence applied to law. In the middle of the talk, the CEO of a major firm publicly praised my company. "Honestly," he said, "these guys are changing the game. Even some of the traditional firms are struggling to keep up." The cameras panned to the audience, and there was Spencer. His face was completely pale, with a mix of shock and horror. At that instant, he understood everything. I was not just his wife's failed ex-boyfriend. I was the man who was destroying his career. Later that same night, he exploded. A mutual contact sent me a message. "Bro, Spencer just completely lost his mind in a meeting. You have to hear this." From what I was told, during a strategy meeting, someone mentioned my company as the example of the kind of competition they had to face. Spencer lost control, slammed his hand on the table, yelled at his own bosses, and started saying that I was a lucky fraud, that my company would end up crashing. The problem was that no one was laughing with him. They all looked at him as if he had lost his mind. In that room, they were starting to understand something that I had known for a long time. Spencer was not the future. I was. I could have left things like that, but I still had one last move left. A few months later, my company was ready for the biggest acquisition we had ever made. We bought a smaller but highly influential law firm, which happened to be a direct competitor to Spencer's firm. It was not just a business decision, it was checkmate. When the deal closed, several of Spencer's biggest clients moved over to us. His firm could not handle it. In less than 6 months, they were forced to merge with a competitor. Spencer was no longer a partner. He was no longer in charge. Now he was just another employee, probably doing the same kind of grunt work he had bragged about escaping years ago. And Madison had married a man whose career was in freefall. In the same way she had left me looking for security, she was now trapped with someone who was losing everything. I, on the other hand, had won, not only professionally, but also personally. I rebuilt myself from scratch, built something real, and found happiness on my own terms. I saw Madison one last time, and funnily enough, It was in an exclusive airline lounge. I was waiting for my flight to Tokyo because we were expanding the company to the Asian market when I saw her. Madison was sitting alone in the airport lounge looking at her phone. She was no longer carrying designer bags or wearing expensive jewelry. She looked different, more tired, even a little older. That perfect life seemed to have taken its toll on her. When she saw me, I noticed something in her eyes. For a split second, a spark of hope seemed to appear. She even rose slightly from her seat, as if she were thinking of coming over. I simply shook my head. Then I turned around, walked to the boarding gate, boarded my first-class flight, and did not look back. In the end, I did not even need to destroy Madison. She made the choices that led her there herself. She traded true love for social status, and when that status disappeared, there was not much left. Spencer, who used to seem like the perfect provider, was now just another disgraced lawyer trying to stay afloat. That glamorous life they had was reduced to something quite mediocre. Meanwhile, I finally had everything I had worked for. My company became a major force within the industry. I had real friends, a life I built from scratch, and a relationship with someone who truly believed in me from the very beginning. I never replied to Madison's last messages. I also did not react to her silent attempts to reconnect, because in the end, I understood something simple. The best revenge was not ruining her life. The true victory was simply living mine better, happier, and without her. Quick recap. My girlfriend left me because I was not successful enough for her wealthy family. 2 years later, my startup ended up accidentally destroying her new boyfriend's career, and I got to watch her perfect life crumble while mine finally thrived. Update. I did not expect this story to get so much attention. Thanks for all the comments and messages. To answer some common questions, yes, I am still with my amazing girlfriend. We have been together for about 1.5 years now. And Pixel, the cat, is still with me. He now lives happily in our pet-friendly office and basically acts as if he owns the place. The company is also still growing, and no, honestly, I do not feel bad about what happened to Spencer. Second update. For those asking if this story is fake, I wish it were. I changed some details for privacy, but the main story is completely real. Sometimes life, funnily enough, ends up looking a lot like the ending of a movie. Comment. Watching this story, I was truly struck by how we respond when our trust is broken. The most powerful response isn't about getting even. It's about getting better for yourself. It reminds me of how important it is to build strong, healthy boundaries to protect our peace. True self-respect means recognizing when a chapter needs to close for good. We are each responsible for our healing, and sometimes that healing starts with walking away. Instead of pouring energy into past hurts, we can invest it into building a future we are proud of. That process starts with being kind to ourselves, especially when we feel let down. The goal isn't to win against someone else, but to win back our inner peace. I hope this inspires you to choose your well-being above all else. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.